We were walking near the Macroplaza. It was already late. Transportation stopped, so we had to walk. Suddenly in the distance, we saw a couple of figures dressed completely in black. And the closer we got, the more we noticed their extraordinary height. We tried to ignore it, but as we passed by, we realized they started following us. And their faces were horrifying, like dead people. Good evening, community. I hope you're all doing very well. I really do. I hope you're all doing very well. I really do. I hope you're in a great mood to listen to this episode. That everything is fine and the only concern is surviving the fear that's coming tonight. Of course, that's not going to be easy. The stories today are going to be, well, you're going to hear them. They're much closer than you think. Thank you. Don't be misled by the title. These stories could happen to you. Hopefully not. I'm going to give you, as always, one last chance to go look for another type of content. Maybe something scary but less frightening. Because these stories are going to stay with you. Especially if you get the crazy idea to listen to them before going to sleep. Ready? Ready? Let's begin. This is Stories of the Night. Hi Oriol. I'm sending you greetings from me and a friend. Thank you. We're fans of your channel and I want to share something that happened to a coworker, Jabo. He gave me permission to send you his story. This happened in Monterrey around 1994 when he was 14 years old. That day, he got together with 4 other friends from middle school at one of their houses in the old neighborhood area. They spent the afternoon there between homework and chatting, and time slipped away without them noticing. By the time they realized, it was already around 1 in the morning. No buses were running at that hour. According to them, the last one left a little before midnight. They didn't have a car either. And well, back then there was nothing like Uber, just taxis or eco-taxis, and it wasn't always easy to find one. That's why they had no choice but to walk home. Before leaving, some of them managed to call home to let them know they were on their way back, and the 5 of them left together. Walking along Jose Maria Cos Street with the idea of heading toward the Macroplaza. Pavo says that back in those years, that area felt very lonely at night. There were stretches where there was practically no one, and the lighting was very poor. At one part of the path, they had to go down some stairs to continue. That area was even darker, and there was no other way around it. It was there that they saw 2 people. They were in the distance, near one of the few streetlights that were shining. At first, it didn't seem strange to them. 2 people dressed in black, standing still as if they were simply there, and they weren't scared because there were 5 of them. But the closer they got, something started to seem very strange to them. It seemed like those 2 figures were taller than normal. It was a strange feeling they got from seeing them, as if their size wasn't clear at first, but seemed to come into focus as they got closer. Even so, they didn't make any noise, and among themselves they whispered to just pass by without drawing attention. I guess they wanted to believe it was some effect of the low light, the lantern, the shadows, and the figures didn't move. They didn't even seem to have noticed them. They were desperate, standing, staring into nothing. They weren't talking to each other or anything. Just watching. So they kept walking, slowly, going around them as much as possible. Jabo was in front, The boy who was at the very back was the only one who turned around. And as soon as he did, he screamed. Pablo says it was a horrible scream that shook them all. The boy screamed like that because at that moment when he turned around, the two figures were no longer in the same place. They were much closer to them. He didn't see how they moved, nor did he hear them walk, but they were already there, close by, and they were watching them. That was enough. The five of them ran out without thinking. They didn't look back. They just kept running, hearing their own footsteps and something else behind them, until they saw a taxi in the distance. The man was inside, and seeing their desperation, opened the doors without asking anything. They got in however they could, practically throwing themselves inside, and the man drove off at that moment. And when the car started to move, one of them heard something in the back. A bang, like someone had managed to hit the trunk. But nobody wanted to turn around. Once we were moving, the taxi driver asked what was going on. Who were those people following him? But he didn't stop. It was at that moment when the one in the back, the guy who saw them coming, started complaining. He said his back burned a lot, like it was on fire. They initially assumed it was due to running or fear. But when one of them lifted up his shirt, they saw he had some kind of rash that went all the way across his back. Red, clearly marked. Like a strong skin reaction, but with 3 lines going down from the shoulder, almost to the waist. Nobody said anything. The taxi kept moving along Padre Mier. They rode in silence, still trying to understand what had happened. Until when turning onto a street, the taxi driver spoke again. Are those the ones? Are they there? They all turned to the front. In the distance on the sidewalk, 2 figures were walking. Identical. Same black, same height, moving forward to where they were. The taxi driver didn't wait any longer. He made a U-turn right then and took another street, driving away. And luckily, they never saw them again. The taxi driver dropped them off at their homes. No one wanted to be alone at that moment, but there was no other choice. Jado says that when he got home, his mom scolded him for how late it was, but she also asked him why he looked like that. He didn't tell her at that moment. He couldn't sleep that night. The next day, at school, the 5 of them met again to talk about what had happened. And they all agreed on the same thing. That those figures didn't move like people. That they changed places without anyone seeing them do it. And that somehow it seemed like they only reacted when someone looked at them directly. And me, let me be clear, I'm not saying that's what they are. But when Jado told me this story, he called them the vampires of the old neighborhood. Hi, how are you, Uriel? I'm sending you and the community a shout out. This happened just a few weeks ago. It's not something that happened directly to me, but I was there, even though I'm not the main character. And I saw. And honestly, I still have no idea how to even begin to explain it. It all started because a friend from high school lost his mom. We hadn't seen each other in years. He was one of those friends who were really, really close at one point, but life just pulls us apart. Even so, when I found out, I felt I had to see him. I went to the wake. I saw him in bad shape, as expected. His mom was a wonderful person, and I cared about her a lot. We spent some time there talking. At first, the usual stuff, but little by little, the conversation became more personal. We remembered things from school, people we don't even see anymore. And we also talked about his mom, about the memories I had with her. He said he didn't know how to handle his feelings, that there were many things he left unsaid. You know, the things we think about when we lose someone. When maybe we didn't say enough times how much we love them. But here's where it got weird. A few days later, he texted me again out of nowhere. He told me that he had been doing something, that he didn't know why, but he felt like he could only tell me. And honestly, from that moment on, I felt strange. And I asked him what it was. He told me that he had been sending messages to his mom. Just like that. He knew she wouldn't read them, but it helped him vent. He wrote to her as if she were still there. Honestly, this still didn't seem strange to me. But then he told me something else. That the day before, one of the messages had been marked with a double check, and as if it had been delivered. I told him that didn't make any sense. That surely the number was already active again, or that they had reassigned it. But also she had just died. He hadn't even reported it or canceled the line. And also there he explained something to me that really bothered me. That when they buried his mom, he himself put some of the things she always used into the coffin. Among them, her cell phone. She used scissors to prune her plants. At that point, I didn't know what to say to her. Even so, I tried to stay logical. I told her there had to be an explanation, that someone could have taken the phone or something like that. And that's why I suggested we go see it. At his house, I noticed he was different. He wasn't sad like he was at the wake. He was restless, as if he hadn't slept in a long time. And then he told me something that had just changed. He told me it wasn't just the delivered check marks anymore. He told me that now they were responding to him. I told him not to say nonsense, that someone was playing a prank on him and he didn't argue. He just handed me the phone. And the conversation was open as a unit. They were long messages, very long from him. Things he told her, memories. He asked her forgiveness for many things. But among those messages, there were answers, I swear to God. Short answers, simple. There weren't many, but they were there. Of course, I told him that didn't prove anything, that anyone could have written them. That's when he moved a bit closer to me. And he told me he was going to ask me something that no one else knew. He grabbed the phone and wrote, Mom, you know who's here, right? Why did the two of us stop talking? We just stared at the screen. I don't know why, but I was really, really scared. No, nothing was happening. 1 second, 2, several, no. I was about to say something to him, and at that moment a message arrived. What? Because of Pablo. Why? My stomach turned, because it was true. Because that was the reason why we had grown apart. And it wasn't something he was going around telling people. It was something only he and I could know. He looked at me and said, see? He then said he'd ask him something else. That he was going to ask where she was and when he would see her again. And I don't know why, but at that moment I felt that something wasn't right. As if that wasn't something we should keep messing with. So before he finished writing, I took the phone from him and without thinking, I smashed it against the wall. And it broke. But I grabbed it again and smashed it against the floor until it wouldn't turn on anymore. My friend went crazy, and I understand. He pushed me. We almost got into a fight. He yelled, asking what was wrong with me. The only thing I said was that she wasn't his mom and that he shouldn't keep going with that. He got angry and kicked me out. Since then, we haven't spoken again. I know he was going through something really tough, and I know that maybe what I did wasn't the best thing. That I had no right, but I also feel like I couldn't let it continue. That something was about to take advantage of him. I don't know what that was. I'm not sure if anything like that exists on the other side, or if everything has an explanation that we're not seeing. But I was left wondering, and that's why I wanted to share it here. And ask you all, do you think something like that could happen? That the afterlife could manifest itself through something as simple as a message, or through a phone no? Thank you for sticking around, community. Today, I don't want to tell you to vote for us for the Spotify Awards, or to buy the book, or to leave us a comment. None of that. Today, you don't have to do any of that. Today, I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much. Spotify is celebrating its 20th anniversary and has released its all-time most listened to lists in artists, songs, podcasts, and, well, we are number 10. We are the 10th most listened to podcast in the history of Spotify. Also the most listened to Spanish language podcast in Spotify's entire history. And this project started in a tiny rundown house in Tijuana, Baja California. It makes me very proud for everything we've built together. And it's a source of pride that goes beyond the fact that we're a podcast from Mexico, from Latin America. Really. And it makes me extremely happy to know that we are the most listened to podcast in Spanish. That on that global list, we represent a country, a race, a language that unites us. Thank you, truly always. This is the project of my life. You are my life, and everything good that happens because of this community. But well, enough with the sentimental stuff, because we're here to get scared. So let's continue with more stories tonight. Hello, Orel. I hope you can keep this anonymous. I send my regards to you and to the Relatos de la Noche community. What I'm going to tell you isn't exactly a scary story, but in my family, it has always felt like something that was never really resolved. It goes back several generations. We've been told it all begins with my great-great-grandmother. She came to Mexico from France as a child along with her mother. No one truly knew why they left. They were just running from something. They settled in a town in Nuevo León. That's where he grew up and where he started getting involved in things that, to this day, no one in my family ever talks about directly. They only say that his mom knew about spells, rituals, things like that. Over the years, my great-great-grandmother ended up learning as well. Later, she got married and had a daughter who would become my great-grandmother. She tried to teach her, but she refused. She never wanted any part of that. She always said it scared her, although she never explained exactly why. That's when, according to my family, everything gets complicated. You see, during the revolution, my great-great-grandmother's husband was recruited. I don't really know which group they were in or those details. Just that on one of the times he came back, he was in very bad shape. Wounded. Practically dying. My great-great-grandmother asked her mom for help. And what she replied was something that stayed in the family. That when death is already coming for someone, there's no remedy that can stop it. Unless something else is given in exchange. I don't know exactly what they did that night. Nobody knows. It's only said it happened behind closed doors and no one was allowed in. But after that, he recovered. He lived many more years, and at the time, that was considered a miracle. The problem is that it wasn't free. That became known much later. Years later, my family moved to San Luis Potosí. They even believed that by moving, they could escape their past actions. But it didn't happen, and my great-grandmother, without knowing anything about the pact, she always said she sensed something odd in the family. That's why she became very devoted. She became deeply involved in the church, as if trying to atone for something she didn't understand. And that's when the pattern started. People in the family started noticing that something happened every February 14th. At first, they were things that could seem like coincidences. But as time went by, it became impossible to ignore. There were 12 losses in the family, for example, in different pregnancies, both on February 14th. Years later, one of my great-grandmother's sisters visited her with her kids. She said she dreamed about her and needed to see her. That day, one of the children fell down some stairs. He rolled onto the train tracks, and at that moment, the train moved back a few meters, and that's where he died, also on February 14th. Now, getting closer in time, when I was a child, we had an accident on the highway. Several of us from the family were going, and we all got injured except for a niece. She didn't have a scratch, and that's what caught our attention because in some way, she was already from another generation. The years went by, and something always happened on that date. But the most intense thing happened in 2006. That day, an uncle had an accident and was left in very serious condition. Almost at the same time, somewhere else, 2 aunts and a cousin were driving on the highway when their car caught fire. They couldn't get out. The only person who survived was a friend who was with them. She said she tried to help, but their seatbelts wouldn't come undone. She only managed to undo her own. That day was also February 14th. It was too much. That's when my family started looking for explanations, and that's when the thing about the diary came out. And they say there was a notebook that my great-great-grandmother's mother left behind, and they say it existed. A record from my great-great-grandmother's mother. And that something about that work was written there. I'm not gonna lie to you. I didn't see it. Not all of us saw it. My grandfather and his brothers read that. But what they managed to say is that it talked about an exchange. That the life of that man had been sustained in exchange for something that would keep being taken from the family. And that this was not going to end until a certain generation. I don't know exactly how it was written. No one repeats it the same way. Everyone uses different words, but they agree on the most important part. That it wasn't something that could be broken, nor solved. After that, the only thing they did was wait. And over time, something changed. Then one year, on February 14th, a little girl came into the family. A baby girl was born. And since then, nothing else ever happened. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. I don't know if it really ended, but in my family, that date still feels different. Not like before, but not like any other day either. There's still some fear. Hello, Uriel. Greetings to everyone who ends up listening to this, if this message ends up being published. This happened in 2023, coming back from a road trip with some friends. And there were 5 of us in the car, and everything was very normal. One of those trips we take just to clear our minds for a while. We left in the afternoon and returned at night. Everything was super chill. Music, talking. No one was thinking anything strange. Nothing scary, not at all. Until one of the guys with us started getting a call, and it was his girlfriend. When we saw the name, several of us exchanged looks. He didn't look the same anymore. He had told us that her reaction was intense, that the girl was very jealous, very controlling. Someone who always wants to know where you are, who you're with, and why you don't answer. He hesitated to answer, but in the end he did, and I don't know why, but he put her on speaker. At first we laughed, because it was the usual stuff. Where was he? Why hadn't he told her he went out? Who was he with? He tried to keep it calm, and he told her he was with us, just with friends. That we had just gone out for a little while, nothing more. But there was a moment when he just went silent, and it was a real silence. Really strange. And then he said something that made all of us look at each other. He started to say exactly where we were. The road, curve we had just passed. He even mentioned a sign that was on the side of the road as we were passing by. We laughed because we thought it was a coincidence, that maybe he had a tracker or something like that. An AirTag. He was just guessing and had already told him where we were going. But then he said something more specific. Something that had happened to us just seconds earlier, and then nobody laughed anymore. We asked him what that looks like. Her boyfriend asked her that too. And what she answered was what changed everything. She said it very calmly. Because you've got one of my dead with you. There was silence in the car. But it was a deathly silence, as they say. No one knew what to say. We thought it was a bad joke, but still a joke. And he told him to stop saying things like that it wasn't funny. But she didn't laugh or change her tone. Nothing. She kept talking as if nothing happened, scolding him. And as if she was seeing the same thing we were. Discovering what was in front of her. What was there? We had just left it behind. At some point, one of us asked her to hang up. That it was okay now, and he ended the call. But she kept talking and talking and talking, and every time the phone rang, and he didn't answer. We all felt a strange fear that we only dared to confess much later. No one wanted to touch her phone. No one wanted to answer her like we would have with any other friend's girlfriend. To a normal girl. We kept searching, driving like that for a while, in silence. Until one of us asked him directly, What was going on? And that's when he said something he hadn't told us before, that his girlfriend was involved in something, that his family had a religion or something like that, very strange, and that his mom performed occult rituals. He didn't explain any further, and honestly, nobody asked him to explain. That night felt incredibly long. Nobody slept well. Nobody wanted to talk much about it, and the strangest thing is that he stayed with her. He stopped hanging out with us. He slowly drifted away until we stopped hearing from him. And to this day, none of us who were in that car have ever mentioned that night again. But I haven't forgotten, especially that phrase, because they carry it, my dead loved one, with you.